Do's and don'ts.
I'd like to welcome everyone to today's share from Rabbi Yakov Zev Smith on the do's and don'ts of making kiddush. I'd like to learn today's share of kosot for Shleima, for Isha Freda, Nomi Bas Esther, so Shechel Yisrael.
Recently I realized that it's a good school. You want to learn and realize how much you don't know. If you wait till a chosen who just got married ask you a few shilas. Someone asked me a few shilas about kiddush that are very basic shilas. We should all know them. We do it every week. And yet I couldn't really answer him clearly because, again, it wasn't clear. He asked me about when you make kiddush, you have to always rinse the kos. If you take a kos out of the becher that was just polished, you have to rinse it. Should someone hand you the kos, or you could pick it up on your own? Is the kos, when you fill it up, it's supposed to overflow? His father's minhag was to add 3 drops to the bottle. What's shot in that? And again, we know a little bit about it, a little bit more, but as we'll see today, these and many more are all based on the Befer Gemaras, all in Shulchan Aruch. So I wanted to learn this sugya. We call it the do's and don'ts of kiddush, and I think it's the tzad hashava is things that are negeya every single Shabbos, and perhaps they don't have a klarkite in them. And also we'll see Yosim Masha Karisi Lefnechem Ksuf Kan, how every nuance of our avodas Hashem, every part of our kiddush, we could say is tilei tilim shel halachos. There's no doubt about it. The mitzvah of kiddush is a very prominent mitzvah. The Gemara says in Pesach Kovav, learns from the passuk in Parshas Yisra, Yizachar Esay Shabbos Lekatsha, Yizachreyu al Hayayin. Now that alone, that we learn kiddush from a passuk in the Aseres Hadibris, tells us the importance of kiddush. According to Rashi and Brachas, Daf Chafim Bebeis, Taisus and Shvuas and Saita, and other Rishonim, there's a mitzvah daraisa to make kiddush with a kos of wine. Now, lamaisa, there's a different way of teaching the word lekatchay, and that is just to sanctify, to glorify, to speak of the shevach of Shabbos. Where do you see dafka al hayayin? Just like kiddush hachodesh, you don't use wine, you mekadesh it, you with bdvarim. And that's why a number of Rishonim, that's the sheet of the Rambam, that holds that really there's no chi of deraisa to make kiddush al hakos. The ikke is lekatchay b'dvarim. The lashon of the Gemara, zeichreyu al hayayin. No, that's a asmachta. But again, this is the sheet of Taisus in some places, the sheet of the Rambam. But what one thing we have to realize, all agree that there's a mitzvah, the araisa, to be mikdash the Shabbos, whether it's mikdash with a kos of wine, or minimally to say words of kiddush. All the minhagim mitzvahs, the Rambam, the Chinuch, the Smag, Rebbeinu Sajigain, all count the mitzvah of kiddush as one of the Taryag mitzvahs. And I saw the Pri Megadim, beginning of Reish Ayin Aleph, says even if it's only an asmachta, but his lashon is asmachta chashuva kiha havi dvar Torah. The Trumas Hadeshen in Chelik Beis Kuf Tezvav regarding a suffix in kiddush, he says you have to repeat the kiddush because there's a loisasser if you don't make kiddush properly. He's talking actually you make kiddush on water instead of wine, so you have to repeat the kiddush because minimally we have a loisasser deraisa and perhaps we have a mitzvah of kiddush deraisa. Plus, I must mention the famous Chassam Sofer sheet in the Tshuvas Tezvav Yitzayin and Chafal, also in the Gilyon and Shulchan Aruch, that even if you hold that the mitzvah deraisa of kiddush is b'dvarim, but we, Klal Yisrael, have a mind not to be yaitza with the kiddush that we say in shul. We want to be yaitz with kiddush al hakos. Reb Kiva Egan, Reish Ayin Gimel, Tezayin, actually Tais Shabbos and Sifkat Gimel, the Mishmur Sifkat Chaf, all say the same thing on their own. So as you see, I didn't do justice, but our kiddush is very important. whether it's deraisa or rebnן, but for us, we can look at it like a real mitzvah deraisa. Of course, the objective, the purpose of it, as the chinuch and mitzvah laman aleph explains, kiddush nis'oirem mitoich ma'aseh zeh lizchar gedulas hayom v'nikva b'levavenu emunas chiddush ha'olam. This is a weekly rejuvenation. We refresh and we recharge our battery of emunah. When you think about the simple meaning of the words of kiddush, of viכולו, you wonder how many millions and billions of architects and carpenters and electricians and plumbers were needed to build this world. And just to build this shul, how many workers, how much time went in? But we know that's a foolish question. Not one worker, not one bit of work. Ki v'ka Hashem ksor olam, and b'dvar Hashem shemayim nasu. And we think about the kiddush and the ma'aseh bereishis, a person should become shikah with emunah. The brias ha'olam, the concept, like the Gemara says in Shabbos, nasa, kufyu tesam abeis, whoever says vayichulu, nasa shutiv lakadosh baruch hu b'ma'aseh bereishis. So the Chaim asks, what does that mean? You can't become a shutiv what was built already? But again, maybe it means a person becomes closer and closer to the Rebbeinu Shalom and his nefloyas habayri. But be that as it may, again, we're not doing justice, but it's certainly a very important chizuk in our emunah in Bria Sa'olam. To apply this lamaisa, one thing is pashit, that since there's definitely a deraisa in kiddush, zakti b'nei yisaschen derech pikudecha in mitzvah lamed aleph, you have to be mechavan l'shem mitzvah. And if someone said kiddush without any kavana, he would have to repeat the kiddush. Because we paskin mitzvah sichas kavana. The fact that we say Vayichulu 3 times is based on a Hagoyis Maimonides quoting a medrash Shoichetov. This is Hagoyis Maimonides in Tefillah Perek Tes Halacha Hey. The Mishnah Berurah quotes a Rekech that says the same, and the Kafachayim and Reish Ayin Aleph Nun Tes quotes Al Pisoi from the Ariya Kodesh that we say Vayichulu 3 times. Actually, the halacha there's also a reason. We say it once in davening. We say it after davening, after the Shemay Nesra, I should say. But we say right after the Shemay Nesra, because Yom Tiv Shechal B'Shabbos, we don't say it in the Shemay Nesra. And we'll soon see the third time we say it at home is B'moitzi, our family members who didn't daven, who didn't say it in shul. But that's clear that the Vayichulu that we say as Kiddush, the Torah in the beginning, and Reish Ayin Aleph, it's actually in the new print, it's Sif Yud, to be moitzi b'nei beisai who didn't say Vayichulu in shul. But now you realize that even if a person is home alone, he has no family, he still has to say Vayichulu in Kiddush, because as we said, al pi ksoid and basically al pi halacha, we must say 3 times Vayichulu. And I'll show you to the extent how this is important. The Mishnah Berurah in Sif Katan Mem Hey, it's all in Reish Ayin Aleph, he says if someone said Kiddush and simply forgot to say Vayichulu, how that happened, I stopped asking how things happen. Things happen, let me tell you. He said Kiddush with a kos and he drank it, he forgot to say Vayichulu. So Mishnah Berurah says that during the Suda, fill up a kos and say Vayichulu ala kos. Don't make a bracha. Okay, you could drink the kos, it's optional, but you have to say Vayichulu ala kos. That will be a very memorable Kiddush. Your family will see what's going on, they won't figure it out. But you have to say Vayichulu ala kos, al pi halach and al pi soid. But Rabbi say, and here we start to see the Yosi Masha Karisi Leflechem Ksuf Kam. Okay, we know Kiddush is important, Vayichulu is important. Why do we start with the words Yom Hashishi? Now you'll ask an unlearned person, who'll think, well, what do you mean? The passuk starts Yom Hashishi Vichulu Hashemayim. But that's foolish. Yom Hashishi is the end of Perik Aleph in Bereishis. Vayichulu begins Perik Beis, a different passuk, a different Perik. And why do we make a challenge? Yom Hashishi Vayichulu. And yet the Ramah in Sif Yud, Reish and Aleph says Maschilin Yom Hashishi. So the simple pshat that the Ramah himself records is because we want to start Kiddush with the shame, at least the Rosh Hashanah is Yud Kei Vav Kei. So Yom Hashishi Vayichulu Hashemayim is the Rosh Hashanah is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Now, lest you think this is Stam Gizokt, there's a minhag that some Yidden have regarding standing or sitting for kiddush. Now, of course, as you know, some people stand for the entire kiddush, some people sit for the entire kiddush. The Ramah has a unique minhag. The Ramah's minhag seemed to have been to sit for the entire kiddush, but when you say Yoim Hashishi Vayechulu Hashemayim, Oimid Ktsas, you stand up a little bit. Why? You don't stand for Vayechulu. Even for Eidos you don't stand. But for Yud Kei Vavka you have to stand. So you see obviously that there's more to Yud Kei Vavka than meets the eye, because we say Shem Hashem and Kiddush and many people sit. But obviously, Yosema Shekris Lefnechem Ksuv Kam. But then the Magen Avram, on this Ramah, adds a second reason that opens a whole new window into the greatness of Kiddush. Says the Magen Avram, Sivka and Chav Beis, you have another reason to Yom HaShishi. Because we have to have in the Kiddush 72 words, connected, of course, the Shem, the Shem, Ayam Beis, and therefore you have to add Yom HaShishi. So let me explain this, because the Magen Avram is a little brief. In the parsha of Vayichulu, there are exactly 35 words. That's easy because there's no different girsais. Take out a chumash. Vayichulu is 35 words. In the nusach of Kiddush, according to some nuschais, there's also 35. If you don't say kivanu b'charta, and if you don't say the words kihu yoim, you have 35 words. 35 and 35 is 70. But you're short 2. The objective is 72. Therefore, says the Magen Avram, you add the word Yom HaShishi. 70 plus 2 is 72. Then he says, from the Kunei Shabbos, that's the different Gerson, the Zoya, obviously, that you have to have 70 words. Because this connected the Shivim Shemes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not the Shem Ayin Beis, but the 70 Shemes. So therefore, you don't say Yom HaShishi. You say Vayichulu and Kiddush, and you have 70. So here we see already there's something a lot more significant that one meets the eye, whether it's 70 or 72. Now, the minhag of 72 obviously counts Yom HaShishi to complete the number 72. But listen to this. If you take out a Siddur, Nusach Ashkenaz, don't be insulting Nusach Svar, but that's the way the Magen Avram is referring to, and you count the words of the bracha of Shemay Nesra of Ma'ariv, it also will total 35. So you have a package of Kiddush, of course, in the Kiddush, and you have a package of 70 in the Shemay Nesra, Vayichulu, and then you have the bracha, that's 35 plus 35 is 70. So here we see, it seems like, Kiddush and Shem Hashem are one and the same. Kiddush b'dvarim, Kiddush halachos. But Rabbi says there's much more to this. Because at the end of the day, it's still a little strange. You take Yom HaShishi from one perik, Vayichulu Hashmai from a different perik, and you make a shidduch, and you have Yud Kei Vav Kei. There's more to this. Zok the Goyin in Bir HaGrol Sivka and Chav Hei, on our Ramah, he says there's a reason why there's some division between Yud Kei and Vav Kei. There's a reason why you have to add the Yud Kei. Zok the Goyin, because the words Yom HaShishi, he quotes the Medrash, is a remez for Tosefah Shabbos, adding to the Shabbos. So therefore, Zok the Goyin, there's a beautiful package. Yom HaShishi is what we add. Vayichulu, we start Shabbos Bizman. So together, the Yud Kei Vav Kei forms the beauty of the Shabbos. So you think about it, in one tiny minhag, if there is such a thing, 3 reasons why we say Yom HaShishi, either to form the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, or to complete the 72 words, or the Goyin says you want to have Tosefah Shabbos together with Shabbos itself. But Lamaisa, it is still a little strange. You couldn't find a remez in the same passuk. You have to take from 2 different psukim, 2 different parakim. So that I'll refer to a Marsha in Avodah Zarah Daf Gimel. Marsha says a Daf Hanifla Kedarkai, and he says that Ki v'kol Hashem tzur elam. The Baruch Hashem created this world with Yud Kei. When will there be the Shem Shalem? When will be Yom Shekulei Shabbos, Mashiach comes. So it's very meduyik. Yud Kei we start off, that's now. We hope when it'll be a Mekadesh Shabbos, when the world will be one big Shabbos, then we'll have Yud Kei Vav Kei. But right now, we have to keep it separate, because now the Shem is not Shalom, the Kisi is not Shalom, so all we have is Yud Kei. So you think about it, you start with the 2 words, Yom HaShishi, besides starting off with a bang, Yud Kei Vav Kei, but there's so much meaning and symbolism and depth and oimik, it's Yosim Ashakiri Sufka. Now you're probably wondering, but what about me? Now, me could mean either if you say the full nusach of Kiddush, you do say Kivanu V'charta, Kiyuyim, and if you do daven nusach Svard, you don't even have the Kiddush in davening. What am I doing about the 72 words? I have too much. So here we have an old Yesod, the Buchacha, and Al Simon discusses it at length. I also saw this in the tshuva from the Erlaya Rav. They say that the Yesod really in these inyanim is you have to have at least the number that we're trying to achieve. If you have a little extra, the more the merrier. One raya that the Buchacha refers to is we find in the beginning of Reish Samach Gimel, you're supposed to have 2 neiris keneged zacha v'shamar. But the Ramah himself says if you have more, it's better. Some people make 7, some people according to the children in the family. So we see that if you have more, v'chayil l'haisif as much as you want. So the point is to have at least 72. So for those that don't say Kil Yom and Kivanu V'charta, make sure to add Yom HaShishi. But if you say it and you add it, no, nach besa, you can't go wrong. So it's interesting that those that say the full Kiddush and those that have a Nusach Svard will always have more than 72, but it's also still very effective. Lamaisa, you'll ask me, so what's the right Nusach? I mean, there are pros and cons. I think the Magen Avraham puts it very well. He ends this shtickle, V'linira de'ein l'shanai shum minhag. Ki l'chol minhag yesh tam v'yisoid doik v'tishkach. Every minhag is heilig, minhag is shol Torah. The bright minhag is to follow your family minhag. Someone, Rabbi Yakov was once learning with the Olam Hilchos Kiddush, and he came to a question that was totally minhagim. So someone asked him, what's the Rosh Yeshiva's minhag? In other words, whatever the Rosh Yeshiva does, I'm going to do. So Rabbi Yakov was a step ahead of him. He says, my minhag is my father's minhag. So unless you have the same father like I have, you don't really have to know what my minhag is. It's irrelevant. So every person should proudly follow their father's minhag. Now, Lamaisa, what's very interesting is that the Seder Hayoim, we got it before the Magen Avraham, the Seder Hayoim says there's another way of supplementing to get 72 words, and that's to add Sabri, Rabboisai, or Sabri Maranan. Now, the emphasis, the Sabri Maranan is based on a Ramon, the end of Kufay and Dalit. When a person is benching, or anytime when a person is saying something for others, Savri Rabboisai. Some add Sabri Maranan, Rabbanan, Rabboisai. But what's noteworthy, that the Tzais HaShulchan in Ayin Tes Yud Aleph says, when you come to Kiddush, just say those words. Sabri Maranan. The Morakitzia, it's the Yankiv Emden, the end of Kufay and Dalit says, even if you're alone, make sure you say those words, Sabri Maranan, at least. So now we understand where they're coming from. Since, according to the Seder Hayoim, we're using those 2 words, Sabri Maranan, to make from 70 to 72, I guess he holds, instead of Yom HaShish, you count that. So first of all, you have to say it always, even if there's no one else there. It's not just for someone else, it's for yourself. But more importantly, don't say too much. If you start adding Maranan, Rabbanan, Rabbi Sai, so you end up with 74. So this, on a simple reading, you have 2 ways of making from 70 to 72, either the Yom HaShishi or Savri Maranan. Now, Lamaisa, if you have Chashava guests or you have your Chashava children, it's kedai to say Savri Maranan, Rabbanan, Rabbi Sai, and look at them proudly and make them feel good. You have too much, we'll rely on what we said, the Yesod of the Buchacha. More is never a problem. But my point only was to see the oimik, the depth of everything we do. Sabri Maranan is important, Yom HaShishi. Whether the minhag of standing or sitting, that's each person follows his own minhag, but at least we understand where it's coming from. Those that stand by Kiddush, it's the Kedushas Kiddush. You want to stand for Vicholu, you're saying Eidos, you have to stand by Midah. And the Kiddush itself is Kaddish. Those that sit is more of a Kviyas. and Vichulou is not necessarily a real Eidos, and the minhag of standing just for Yom HaShishi, Vichulou HaShemayim, that's the Ramah's minhag. What's also noteworthy, that many people don't just start Yom HaShishi. They will say Vayera Vayivoike. Where's that coming from? In fact, that might be Moisiv Gareya, because you're going to bring it above the number 72. So the Pshat, the Levush in our Simaresh Ayin Aleph Yud, he just says, when you start Kiddush, say Vayera Vayivoike quietly, and then you say Yom HaShishi. He doesn't explain why. Zogtach Sam Soif in the Chuvas and Siman Yud, he says, really, Yom HaShishi doesn't make sense. What was Yom HaShishi? What Yom HaShishi? So the mice, I want to give it a little more meaning. So you start Vayerev, Vayivoike, Yom HaShishi. Okay, that has some shot. Oh, right there we understand. You're really only saying Vayerev to give it meaning, but it's not part of the Kiddush. So say that quietly, and Yom HaShishi, you raise your voice, and then you start the Kiddush. What's interesting is the Levush, when he describes this minhag, he says, and you say Vayivoike Yom HaShishi, he says Yamoid, you stand up when you say Yom HaShishi Vichulou HaShemayim. Now the Ramah's lashon is Yamoid Ktsas, and I know some people just stand up like you do in the benching, a little bit out of the seat. The Levush obviously changed from lashon the Ramah. He said Yamoid L'chvoid Hashem Yisbarach. Maybe that would be the minhag of those that actually stand up full length when they say Yom HaShishi Vichulou HaShemayim. Now, Lamaisa, with all this, we have a problem from a different angle. There's a basic cloud called psuki le paskin Moshe, anan le paskin. We don't make our own versions of psukim. You read a passuk, read it fully the way Moshe gave it to us from Sinai. So, where do you say, all of a sudden, Yom HaShishi? Middle of nowhere. So some people say, Yom HaShishi is not a problem. There's only two words. We see regarding the chiyuv of sirtut, two words don't count. So it doesn't count for Lagabi Sirtut, it doesn't count for Kol Psuke. But when you say Vayer Vayivoike, no, that's already a few words. So the emes is, the Aruch HaShulchan records the minhag in Siv Chafei of Reish Ayin Aleph, that some have the minhag, and he says it's a minhag nachain, to begin the entire passuk. Vayar, Alkim, you say the whole passuk quietly, and then Yom HaShishi, you raise your voice. This we have no problem of Kol Psuke. The Chassam Sofer in that Tshuva discusses this problem, and he says, he quotes from an earlier source, he actually quotes from the Magen Gibayim, which is from an earlier source, that when you have a asnachta, then after the is like the end, sort of like an end of a pasuk. After the asnachta is like a new part of the pasuk, new enough that you could start from there. And the truth is, Vayerev, Vayivoike is after an asnachta. So Zog Chassam Sofer, it doesn't concern us if you start Vayerev, Vayivoike. The Ramshik, Chassam Sofer's Talmud in Kuv Chav Daled, discusses this also, and he says, but really the problem is not really a problem. If you're saying something as a limud, as a lamaisa, something of meaning, then you have a problem of Kol Psuke. But if you say it derech tzachus, he says derech tzachus is not a problem. And here in Kiddush, it's basically just a heichatimtza. You're trying to start the Kiddush, you can't start Yom HaShishi, so you throw in a few extra words, it doesn't really count, and therefore you could say it and not worry about Kol Psuke. But what to me was interesting, so the Chassam Sofer seems to be bothered. Listen, if you could do it right, why not do it right? Why don't you start Vayar Alkim as Kol HaShosa? Be a sport. He says, no, that's not an option. Because it says the passuk v'hinei toiv ma'oid, in that passuk, the Medrash teaches toiv ma'oid is zem maves. We don't want to start Shabbos with maves, even an allusion, even a reference to maves. So again, you say Kiddush, yoisim asher krisav nechem ksuf, and a whole Torah about how to start. So here we see that the Kiddush, again, is omuk miyachilenu, but on a simple level, we want to start off with Yom HaShishi, and we do it right with various minhagim. I must mention that the Siddur Yavitz, the Yavitz in the Siddur, he says the proper way to do it is to say Yom HaShishi, then pause, And after you pause, then you continue Vicholo. Why? Pashit. And you think about it, like the reasons, it's Pashit. Yom HaShishi is one thought, one parak. Vicholo is another parak. It doesn't mix. Zok Lekute Marich, but then again, like the reasons that you want to keep together, Yud Kei Vav Kei, or other reasons, it might be better to combine it into one. So whether you say it together or not, that's really totally minhagim, but definitely we see every minhag Yisrael is kiddush. Now we have basically the last group of questions regarding kiddush and of benching, so we'll have a double benefit, and I should mention we'll also discuss a little bit about the dalet kaisis, so we'll have a triple benefit, but for all of this we have to learn a Gemara. The Gemara is in Brachis Nun Aleph. I guess the Yid and still remember it well. And the Gemara says, and I quote, Asara Dvarim Nemra B'Kaishal Bracha. Kaishal Bracha requires 10 features. Ton Hadocha, Ushtifa, we'll soon see rinsing, Chai, and you have to mix, Umale, it has to be full, Itur, crown, Ituf, the proper dress code, Noitel B'Shtei Yodav, take it with 2 hands, the Noisne B'Yamin, hold it in your right hand, Magbia Min HaKarka Tefach, you lift it off the ground, a tefach. In those days they ate on the floor, as we know about in the Seder night, they used to have a seba, but they're on the floor. The Noisen Ein of Boy, and you look at it. Then the Gemara says that these 10 are part of Kaisel Bracha, but the real 4 important ones are Hadocha, Shtifa, Chai, and Mole. Those 4. So right away the Gedoyle Achroinim, actually I even saw some of the Rishonim say this, it's Rosh Hashanah Simcha. In other words, Simcha Leish B'Maneh Piv, the 4, Shtifa, Mole, Chai, and Hadocha also spells out the word Simcha. So we see 10 parts of Kaishal Bracha, 4 main ones. Now Taisus is quick to sort of rephrase this, and he says, but Lamaisa, we see that the Tanoim, Amoraim were very busy with this, so we'll say, Yesh lahachmer, do all 10. In other words, none are ma'akiv, but all are important. Now let's apply this to Kiddush, and Agav we'll also see about benching and dalet kaisis. First of all, the Gemara says ituf. What does ituf mean? So the Gemara explains, Rav Papa ma'atif Yosef, Rav Asi parasudri al reishay. In other words, you have to be dressed properly for benching, for kaisel bracha. Zoktem Mishtabura in Kuf Pei Gimel, Sif Kot Yun Aleph, quoting both Bach and Magen Avram. When you bench, you're supposed to wear your hat and jacket. Yarmulke is good, but not enough. Wear a hat and jacket. And the Mishtabura writes a strong lashon. That's the universal minhag. When you bench, wear a hat and jacket. Now this is negeya for us for Kiddush also, because in Reish Ayin Aleph, Sif Yud Ramah says that the kos of Kiddush needs all of the halachos that are necessary for the kos of benching. Therefore, I saw the Shmir HaShabbos in Mem Zayin Chav Zayin. He says a Yirei Shemayim should always wear his hat and jacket for Kiddush. Now, even if you take off the hat and jacket for the Suda, but for Kiddush, the hat and jacket should be on. In fact, he says not only the one that says the Kiddush, but anybody who's Yaitza, because he has the same chiyuv of Kiddush. He's being Yaitza Kiddush. Shemei Ka'ina would apply in this respect also. Now, generally after Shul Friday night, we come in with hats and jackets, maybe Kiddush in Shul. If you can't find your hat, so if you wear a talis, put the talis over your head. But this is basically based on a Gemara, that for Kiddush, like benching, hat and jacket is the way to be dressed. Of course, the day Kiddush is a notch lower. It's the Kula Alma Midrabanan, but then again, it's still a mitzvah of Kiddush, and that's part of the prerequisite of Kiddush. The next question is very negeya, because it has many ramifications. And that is there an absolute chiyuv to rinse the becher before you make Kiddush? Now, let's talk on a simple level. The becher was polished l'kavod Shabbos in the break front. It's anything but dirty. What am I rinsing? Or question number 2, I used it for Kiddush last night, and it's the way it is. Can I reuse it now for Kiddush by day? Or let's be more aggressive. You come to Shul, this is part of Murphy's Law, and the Kiddush is ready, the kugel smells tantalizing, and you can't find the becher. Someone just made kiddush, and he left half the wine in the becher. We say, no, make kiddush. No, we got to rinse it. But the problem is the sink is 100 feet from here. Now, people have been fasting 3 days, as you know, for this kiddush, and they can't wait. Just make kiddush, add wine. Can I just add wine and make kiddush as it is? And this is also negeya, the leil haseder. Do you have to rinse the becher in between kosot? So, simply speaking, this is a beferish gemara. Because part of the 4 big ones, the main ones, is shtifa and hadacha. Hadacha, the Gemara teaches, means wash it inside. Shtifa, the Gemara teaches, in the outside. Now, if you look in the Zoya is bothered. What do you have to wash on the outside? Toichai kebarai. A yid has to be 100, ish Yehudi 100%. So here we see Midina Gemara, and the Shulchan Aruch quotes this, both in Kuf Pei Gimel, and in Reish Ayin Aleph Yud, that kiddush has to be like benching, so you have to rinse the kos. So what's the shaila? However, you look in Tosfos and more mefurish Rabbeinu Yain, and that's sugi and brachis. They say, when do you have to wash the kos if it's dirty? Dirty does not mean if it has some wine residue. Dirty means if you ate the suda, and in those days they would dip the bread or whatever food into the kos of wine. So as the Rabbeinu Yain spells it out, the shas achila, there is some shiurei achila, that is inappropriate for kiddush. That's a food residue. That's not just wine. And therefore you have to wash. But our clean kos, or believe it or not, our kos that was used by someone else for kiddush, what's wrong with it? It's still clean. It was clean. It's still clean. There's no food residue. And I'll bring you a raya berura. Because you think about it, you'll see a dava nifla. We have 4 kosot on Pesach by night. Now the first one is generally clean, but after you drink the first kos, we just fill it up for the second kos. We don't rinse it out. But after the second kos, in other words, when you're starting to make the third kos after the benching, we do rinse it out before the third kos. From third to fourth, we don't rinse it out. Make up your mind. Some you do, most you don't, one you do. Manishtana hakos hazeh. And the plea is, you look in the Mishnah and Taf Ayin Gimel, Sif Katan Samaches, kos sheni, you don't have to rinse it, between first and second. Third and fourth, you don't have to rinse it. But in Taf Ayin Tes, in the beginning, the Mishnah says you have to rinse the kos before you take the third kos. Manishtana. So for us it's beautiful. Because the second kos, first to second, there's no shirei achila. There's no eating. Third to fourth, there's no eating. But from the second kos, which you use during the Suda, now you're about to bench, there is a potential possible shirei achila that you have to wash. So there you see, Minei Ubei, that kos with it has residue of wine is okay. It's only if it's used in a Suda do you have to wash it. And that's indeed the Mechaber's sheet that seems so. At least he quotes this in Kuf Pei Gimel Aleph, kos shel bracha ta hadacha b'mifnim. But if there's no shiurei kos, there's no food residue, you don't have to wash it. And that's why you'll see many people will not rinse the kos, especially it comes from the break front Friday night. What's wrong with it? I did see Reb Shlomo Zalman in Shulchan Shlomo Reish Ayin Aleph Sif Katan Yud Zayim. He says, he makes a chiluk. If you're taking a kos that someone else drank from, like in the case of the shul, someone else drank from it, so since, according to Masech Derech Eretz Rabbah, Perik Tes, you shouldn't drink from someone else drank from, so that's lacking in kavod habracha. So if you're using someone else's used kos, then you should wash it. But if you have your kos that you use for Kiddush Friday night, and you didn't use it by the Suda, you could pick it up for the day's Kiddush without rinsing it at all. That's not part of the Chiyuv. Ad kan, what we find in halacha. However, it's Yadua, many people are makbid, they rinse out a kos even if it's perfectly clean. This is based al pi Kabbalah. The Kaf HaChaim in Kuf Pei Gimel, Sif Katan Dalid, says Medivri Azoya Kadosh Tikunim, it's mashma that every kos, no matter how clean it is, needs both kinuach, both shtifa and hadacha. We want to know why. I'll tell you exactly why. The Chesed Alafim, that was the Pele Yoyit to Seifa on Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Pei Gimel Beis. He says that why do you have to rinse the kos? It's clean. He called Divrei Chachamim einam rak mishum pashtan shel dvarim ela roisha magia shemaima al kol koitz v'koitz soidis el yoinim. The answer is koitz v'koitz soidis el yoinim. Now you understand. We can move on. It's interesting that Reb Shlomo Zalman and that Shulchan Shlomo and the Aruch HaShulchan seem to allude that that's the minhag. Even the halacha you don't have to. The Aruch HaShulchan was a big Baal halacha, but the Aruch HaShulchan writes, I don't understand why the Beis Yos in Shulchan Aruch he doesn't quote the Zohar. So I could say those that only rinse a kos when it's dirty, they're following the halacha. Those that always rinse the kos, that's al pi Kabbalah, and then it's both hadacha and shtifa. Now, if you come to a kiddush, and assuming that people are very overly anxious, they don't want to wait till you rinse it. So if you want to paskin that here I don't need to, it's only kiddush without shiurei oichel, you're not choish Reb Shlomo Zalman's extra chumrah of someone else drank from it, and you fill up the kos and make kiddush on it. People are very makbid on the mitzvah of kedusha rabbah. There's reason magdimin for kedusha rabbah. I once got an invitation. It says there will be a kiddush achat tefillah rabbah. That I liked. The davening is the rabbah part. But some people are very focused on the kedusha rabbah. So if someone picks up someone else's kos and adds wine to it, I can't say it's wrong. Now you'll say, but the wine is pugum. Someone drank from it. So there are two answers. First of all, you're adding wine, and also the kos itself is generally not pugum. But here we see again, basically those that rinse the kos, that is al pi Kabbalah. Now the next question is, why do some people add 3 drops to the wine bottle? So if the wine is pugum, I understand. But it's a new bottle, it's a fresh bottle, it's not pugum. So you might say, oh, wait a minute, isn't that the Gemara? The Gemara says one of the things is meziga. You don't drink wine as is, you have to add something. But that's not true. Because in the olden days, when the wine was so strong you couldn't drink as it is, then it was necessary to turn from yayin chai, like the Gemara says, into meziga. But Zok to Shulchan Aruch and Kuf Pei Gimel Siv Beis, that our wine is not so strong, you don't have to add anything to it. So why do people add 3 drops? So halacha enechanami, there's no chiyuv. The Beis Yosef in Kuf Pei Gimel quotes a medrash in Rus Hanelem. They say this in adding 3 drops to the kos of wine. We'll soon see the real makar is to add to the wine, and people for some reason add it to the bottle. But now the Beis Yosef is quoting the reason to add 3 drops to the kos of wine. You want to know the reason? I'll tell you exactly. It's up to Kafachayim Reish Ayin Aleph Nun Ches. Kos is gematria 86 Elikim. Yayin is 97 7. The 7 oisius yud in Shem Hashem. Mayim, the yayin is 70, connected to 70 oisius. Mayim is 90, connected to tes yud and b'shem ayin beis. Now you understand everything. We'll move on. But yayin and mayim and kos, everything has meaning. So basically, adding the drops is al pi Kabbalah. The Ramah and Darkei Moshe on this Beis Yosef says, we don't do it in our minhag. But it's interesting, in Shulchan Aruch, even though the Beis Yosef mentioned this minhag, he doesn't quote in Shulchan Aruch. The Mishnah Berurah and Sif Cotton Vav sends you to Beis Yosef that there is an inyan to add something to the kosses. So it's interesting that the Beis Yosef quotes it in Beis Yosef, not in Shulchan Aruch, and the Mishnah Berurah makes a point of reminding us of this minhag. Now, from the wording of the Beis Yosef, it's clear that the minhag was to add the drops into the kos. To my knowledge, the minhag of those that add the drops is into the bottle. L'kuta Marich wonders about this, but that's the minhag, that's the minhag. Those that have the minhag know what they're doing. Those that don't have the minhag, it's based on a simple halacha that today there's no chiyuv of meziga. The next question, do you have to overflow the kos of kiddush? Does it have to pour over? And if a person has a very lefty kiddush, by the time he finishes, it's not full. Does he have to refill it? So this is negeya to benching, kiddush, and also the dalit kosses. So what's interesting is people seem to think Gemara says differently than it says. But the lashon of the Gemara, there's no indication that it has to be overflowing. The lashon of the Gemara in brachas is hamavarich al kos mole nois lenachla b'li mitzarim. Now the word mole means full. Where do you see overfull? However, the bracha that the Gemara is maftiach us, nachla b'li mitzarim umole bechas Hashem, that might imply that it should be overflowing. But there's no mention that the kos has to be overflowing. We know it, we'll soon see in Hilchos Havdalah, Reish Tzadik Vav, the Ramah says the Havdalah kos should be overflowing. But there's no mention of the kos of kiddush being overflowing. In what does mole mean? I'll tell you. L'halacha, all you need for kiddush is a revius. Let's say you have a small amount of wine and you have a big kos, and now the kos is not full. So that is what where mole plays an important role. So the poskim say that if someone has a kos that's not full, let him fill it up. How do you fill it up? So it's interesting minhag that the poskim say add bread to it. Adding bread to it is not very appetizing. I add water, but if you add too much water, it might lose the shem guffin. Especially if you have grape juice and you add water, it loses the shem grape juice. I have a very simple solution: add ice cubes. Ice cubes is very elegant, not bread. It raises the level of the wine, and also, unless you have a very fayadik kiddush, it won't melt. So you don't lose the quality of the wine or grape juice. So if you have grape juice, you want to make. If you have ice cubes, you'll make kiddush on the rocks, like they say, and you only have milas without chesroinus. But that's really where the mole plays a role. But why should it overflow? And the emes is, if you read the Gemara, that's what you're going to find. What's a pliya, the Ramah in Kuf Pei Gimel Beis, which is really based on the lashon of the Torah in Kuf Pei Gimel. The Ramah's lashon is Koishel Bracha Yimalenu Shiyimale Al Kol Gedoisav. Oh, that's a different word. It means it's overflowing. And this seems to be the minhag of those that overflow every Koishel Bracha. Now the question is why? What about Baltashkas? Why are you wasting wine? Havdalah, it says in Shulchan Aruch. Where did the Torah get this from? So the emes is the Taz in Sif Kot and Daled in our Kuf Pei Gimel. He says, I see people, they don't fill the kos till the top. Why not? What about mole? He says, maybe they think that's part of itur, to leave a crown of unfilled part of the kos, but that's not the pshat. He says, okay, I agree. Don't overflow it, because that's wasting wine. He calls it Eimavin Kais Mali Ala Eichlin, but the place we say, the Taz means to say, don't waste wine. And this is important to mention. You know, when the Mechinach speaks about the Issa of Baltashket, he says, even a mustard seed, don't waste. Baltashket is lav dafka $1 million. And you'll see something interesting. The Taz in Hilchos Havdalah, where the Ramah does recommend overflowing it, the Taz says, but don't overdo it. Just minimize the amount of overflow als baltashches. In the end of Kuf Ayin, the Ramah speaks about a minhag that you shouldn't drink from a kos and give it to someone else to drink. I guess now with the germs, heightened awareness of germs, they're most concerned about that. He says, but you wipe the lid of the kos, but don't use the drink itself, because that's baltashches. So you see that a yid has to be focused on baltashches. So why should we overflow the kos of kiddush for no reason? So obviously there is a reason. If the Torah and the Ramah say overflowing it, then that's why people do it. But I must mention that I don't know exactly why I put these two, but Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, in a number of his svarim, he's quoted, and I saw that Mrnn and Shulchan Aruch, they learned that the pshat in itur, not like the Taz, that do not fill it entirely and leave a rim, leave the top part of the kos unfilled. Rabbi Zalman used to say that to give someone a kos to make kiddush on it, to make a bracha on, that's overflowing is inappropriate. It's going to spill on his hands or your hand. You have a guest, you give him a cup of tea that's overflowing. So he was in favor of not filling it to the top. Okay, but we saw the Taz says that that's not pshat on itur. But I think we could say that those fill it to the top are doing what the Gemara says. Those that have a minhag to overflow it, it seems to be based not on the Gemara per se, but on the Tur and the Ramah. Now you'll ask, so there has to be full, so how about after I finish my kiddush, it's no longer full? But that doesn't seem to concern me, because it's a din in the kos. The kos has to be overflowing. It was overflowing. As soon as you filled it, you got the bracha. It doesn't have to be constantly overflowing. And Re'ez Apella, I could prove it. Because we try to fill up the arba kaisis, and yet the minhag Yisrael is, when it comes to the 10 makas, we take a little bit off. And we don't find la halacha any place you have to refill it. Now, Pi Soid, there's an inyan to refill it. The Soid Gevuris of refilling it. La halacha, there's no chiv. So obviously, the point of a fill or overflowing is a din in kais shel bracha. Once you did it, you were yaitza. Even if a person had a very lebedik kiddush, he doesn't have to refill it. Now, if it becomes less than revius, which is very rare, then you have to, of course, fill it up. If someone, as we said, has the minhag not to refill it, only by Havdalah, that's following the basic halacha, what we find in the Gemara. Now, the next question I wanted to mention, because I think it will give us clarity to some things that becomes a little embarrassing. I once noticed that they were mechaber someone to bench, and the kais was ready. He'd say, no. And he looked at the back of them, no. He told them, why don't you hand me the kais? So the person said, why don't you take the kais yourself? So he didn't want to talk, because he's after my mechainim. Is there an inyan of someone handing you a kais of benching, kiddush, havdalah? So, as we always do, let's look at the Chazal and we'll get clarity. The source of this minhag is a Gemara that I mentioned earlier, and one of the 10 is noitloi b'shtei yadav. Like the passuk, Su yadechem kaidesh uvarchu es Hashem. Now let me be very clear. The one thing that all agree... Cup. Thank you very much. Using your cup. Okay, the real chiyuv of the Gemara is when the kais is on the table, take it with two hands, and then put it into your right, or as soon as your lefty in his left hand. What's the pshat? I could pick it up with my left hand and put it into the right hand, but I have to hold with two hands. This is a din ha-Gemara. Noit loy b'shtei yadav. Zokte meiri, noit loy b'shtei yadav min ha-shulchan, v'noisnei achakach b'yaminoi. What's the purpose? Zokte taz and sifkat and aleph, he quotes his father, to show chavivas of the kais, shu choshev l'kablei b'chol koichai, and then you hold it in one hand, it shouldn't nira kamasui. But what's clear, the chol hadayis, is you pick it up with two hands, and then reposition it into one hand. Now, this is klar. The only issue becomes, when you look into Rishonim, the Rosh, the Rekeach, the Bahag, and I think the Mefurish in the Shabali Aleket, Kuf Nun Vav, they all have a different girsa apparently in the Gemara, not noitloi, but mikabloi b'shtei yodav. Now the word noitloi could either mean take it or receive it. We just learned, we just learned Daf Beis and Masechta Shabbos, the ani noitloi. Noitloi means take it or receive it. But mikabloi has one meaning, receive it. From whom? This is the source of the minhag of those that have someone hand them the kos. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch, and this is unusual, the Shulchan Aruch, like the Torah, and Siv Dalet, Mekabel b'shtei yadav. So here we see the different minhagim is in a word of a Gemara, literally a word of a Gemara. Now, Lamaisa al pi Kabbalah, the Kavachaim Zivkat and Yotes also explains al pi Kabbalah is another reason to take it from someone with two hands, because there's al pi Kabbalah, al pi Soidis. Now, the only issue is, maybe all of this is Kuf Pei Gimel, which is Birchas Hamazim. Benching, I am benching for the entire tzibur midin ha-Gemara. We just learned the sugya of Zimun. Zimun really was, I bench for the tzibur. So if I'm benching for the tzibur, I have to show a little submission, a little hachna. I'm not going to grab it. Let someone hand it to me. Especially if there's a balabas that's mechabed me, it's inappropriate to chap. Relax, let him give it to you. But who said when I'm making kiddush for my family or I'm making kiddush alone, I have to be mekabel it from someone? So maybe the only din of mekabel bichlal is by benching. And this is indeed the taina of Rabbi Yaakov Emden in the Siddur Yavitz. It's in the new prints. It's Chelik Al Amatov Samachtes. He says some people added a new minhag that someone hands them the kaishal bracha. Listen to the Gemara loy mashmach. I don't know where they got this from. The Gemara does not say that. Now the emes is his gersa was night loy, so then loy mashmach. But if the gersa is mekabloi, it's mefurish. Then he says, and even the Zoya, I'm not so convinced, holds like this. He says, he refers you to his Sefer Maraktziyah. But then he says, what's my minhag? When I remember to do it, I do it. Very laid-back attitude. And then he says, but one thing is for sure. It's only when there's an Areyach that's benching with Brishus Balabas, then maybe it makes sense that the Balabas hand it to the Areyach. But Stam, why are you wasting time? You know, you're just being mafsik between minhagim and benching, and ends up you start fighting back and forth. You just forget the minhag. Maybe by benching when there's an areach and a balabayis. And in the Siddur Tzlois, the Avram has the same analysis. It's a din in benching with the balabas. But what's, like I mentioned, there's an earlier source, the Lekad Yoshu, which the minhagim of Trumas Hadesh, and it's page 86. He says, when it comes to Leilei Pesach, there's no din of mekabloi b'shtei yadav. Now this is interesting to me. He apparently had the gersa mekabloi b'shtei yadav, but there's no such din on Pesach. Why? Because it's not like benching. It's only by benching, but Leilei Seder or Kiddush and Havdalah, there's no din of receiving the kais from someone else's hand. So it's only a din in benching. Again, I say, al pisoid, some people are makbid every kaishal bracha, even kiddush, someone hands to them, but it seems that the chiyuv might be never, if you learn night light. By benching, and certainly by ayreyach, there's more of an inyan, but basically the real, if there's an inyan, it's more or less by benching. What I found, the Chavas Yor in the Karchayim, in the Kuf Pei Gimel, he says, kiddush and Havdalah is no din of being makabel, only the dalit kaisis. He doesn't say why, but I imagine that's a derech eres. Someone hands it to you, it's a more prominent way to start the kiddush. Which hand to hold the kais? So that's clear, a righty holds in his right hand. The Machab and Kuf Bei Gimel Hey says a lefty should hold it in his right hand, which is his left hand. In Hilchas Lulav, we find the Shulchan Aruch says differently. And again, al pi halacha, the Bali halacha say left hand for a lefty. By Chsidim and Svardim al pi side, you always hold the kais in the right hand. How to hold the kais? So the Magen Avram in Sif Kotan Vav quotes the Shla, B'Shem Mekubalim. They hold it in the palm of your hand, and the 5 fingers should envelop and surround the kais. So you're holding it with the palm and the 5 fingers. That's the way many people do it. There are some tzaddikim that hold the kais of kiddush like they hold the coffee cup, like this, with their fingers. What about the Zoya? So the Magen Avram already says it's einay muchroch. You have to hold it like this, palm and the 5 fingers around it. You could hold it like you hold a cup of coffee. So basically there are 2 minhagim. Grab the 3rd minhag to balance the kais on your 5 fingers, but you have to be a good balancer. To do that, you shouldn't drop it. I must mention what the Gemara says, Magbioi tefach, lift the kais a tefach above the ground or table. Now, generally, if you're standing for kiddush, you definitely have that. If you sit by kiddush or when you bench, make sure to hold it a tefach 4 inches off the table. And Achron Chav, let me share with you a fascinating question. You finally realize how much goes into kiddush, you filled it up, and you did all the minhagim. What is the first thing you do in kiddush itself? I'll give you 2 choices. Either you look at the kais or look in the siddur. Now you're wondering, look at the kais, what's that supposed to mean? That's back to our Gemara. Brachas nun aleph noisan eina boy. Zok the Gemara, nun aleph mebeis, ki heichi delay nisiach daita minei. We want you to be focused on the kais. It's interesting, the Mechaba quotes this. In Kuf Bei Gimel Dalet, Mr. Berurah says, you shouldn't take off your eyes off the bracha. In other words, don't be focused on the wine per se. Like, you can't forget the wine. No, that's not the objective. Connect to the bracha, connect to the mitzvah. This is the way you have kavanah. you look at the kos, you focus on the mitzvah, you have kavanah. That's one option. I'll give you another option. Maybe look into a siddur. Now today there's a heightened awareness about this inyan. It's wonderful. People bench with a bencher. They say ashiyotza from a sign. It's a wonderful thing to connect and say with kavanah. I must mention, someone asked the Goyen, he needed a schooler to bench with kavanah, not have machshava zorais. So he told him it's a passuk in the Megillah. Bevoy lefnei hamelech, omar im ha-seifa, use a siddur, yoshev machshavtoi hara'ah. That was not Purim Torah. That was the Heilige Goyen's remez in the Megillah that if you say from a siddur, you have kavanah. I would add another halacha reason to say from a siddur the kiddush. We said earlier that you say viכולו to be moitzi your family. Now, there's a whole tumult of saying dvarim shebiksav al peh. If you're being moitzi someone, you still have a problem. So how do you remedy the problem? By reading from a siddur. So I'll give you two choices. Say it from look into the wine, like the Gemara says, or look into the siddur. But guess what? This choice number 3 is what the Ramah recommends. And that is, look at the neiros. Where's this coming from? We're back to our Shas. This is Brachas Mem Gimel Amud Beis and Shabbos Kufi Gimel Amud Beis. The Gemara says when someone runs during the week, he loses 1/500 of his eyesight. How can he restore his very necessary eyesight? So the Gemara says from the Kiddush of Friday night. Rashi teaches, drink the wine of Kiddush Friday night. But the Maril and the minhagim in Shabbos Ois Beis quotes the Marash that would say you want to get back your eyesight. Look at two neiros zachar v'shamar. What does neiros have to do with eyesight? Pashit, because ner is 250. 250 times 2 is 500, and since the damage is to 1/500th, like the Gemara says, so with the 500 you restore the loss of 500. As I state in the Maril. And guess what? The Ramah, in Reish Ayin Aleph, Yud, our Ramah, Kishemaschil, what is the first thing to do in Kiddush? Yitain Einav B'nei Rois. He went with this Maril. Now it's interesting, people say, but I have many more than 2 neiros. So again we'll say, either look at 2 neiros, or Kalamois V'Reiz Meshubach. The Darkei Moshe has the problem that we have. It's very nice to have in Yonim, but what about Gemara? The Gemara says, look at the wine, and you have a new inyan. But how does a new inyan override the Gemara? Says the Darkei Moshe, no problem. For Vayichulu, where you need the eyesight, look at the neiros. When you start the kiddush, where you have to connect it with kavanah, look at the wine. And indeed, the Ramah's lashon is very careful. When you start, look at the neiros. When you start the kiddush, look at the wine. Now, Lamaisa, the Magen Avram adds a simple eitzah, politically correct, like you say in America. You stand in a position that you can look at the wine and at the neiros in one shot. But what's interesting is that many people find it difficult to stare at the wine for a long time. Some people find it claustrophobic. They get a little nervous looking at the wine. What am I looking at? So I once cleared the following shayla. Is the din of looking at the wine an inyan in itself? Or maybe it's a way of focusing and not being distracted, looking around which kid is fighting and who's not listening. You're looking at the wine, you're not looking elsewhere. If it's a din in maintaining kavanah, and I find a siddur brings more kavanah, that might be a better option. And this chakira I saw in Rabbi Yakov Emden and Morakatsia, and he seems to say, no, the Gemara says, look at the wine, look at the wine. But the Welt seems to say, look in the siddur. Most people look at the siddur. I could say that the right way to do it is, first, look at the neiros, then either look at the wine or look into the siddur. I must mention for the Shemei Ka'oina, those that are listening have the identical same chiyuv. They also need their eyesight. They also have the kavanah. They also have to be yaitza. Let them do the same. Look at the neiros and look at the wine. And one final thought I want to mention, I saw this in the Shabbos Shabbat, they quotes this Ma'aseh Pella, which is the Rizal in Shara Mitzvahs, Parashas Eikev. The Reb Chaim Vital once had a terrible eye ache, and he went to his Rebbe, Rabbi Rizal, what should I do? In those days, they went to a gadol for eitzah. So the Rizal says, what do you mean? You know the problem. The Gemara says that you have to restore your eyesight when you say kiddush, and your kiddush last Shabbos wasn't on par. And that's why you have a problem. So it seems from this story that the only time that the kiddush works is if you have kavanah. So make sure you have kavanah. And also remember that we gave a whole share, we didn't even start the kiddush yet because Yosim Ashikarisov Nechem, Kasuf Khan, I couldn't talk to you all.
Shame Yegan Shir, tell like people because Yakov Smith. Today's share, Smith says, seeking better Shem of the Shem 5 minutes from Kananya ben Akasha Omer, Osakadish Baruch of the Zakis is Israel, the Fikach, Ibn Torah Mitzvah Shnema, the Nech Office, and Mantzidkoi, Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.
Simcha. I like that to shop from the gift.
It's going at me.
You said I've never heard of it.
We have to, I think it's important to talk more about people who don't make people only listen to the kiddush. To stress them more. That the Shemayim only has to do something.
Busy all over the place. They need it more. Simcha, right?
And the ladies and the daughters.
Maybe they should look into the city too. Maybe they should look into the city.
I'm saying.
Sure. I'll mention it. Good.
It's very important. Yaakov also.
Mrnn, Rabbanan, Rabbi we're here to seek him today in kiddush.
Just to review what we learned today, Bez Hashem. As you see, we have a very big Torah. There's like every kites and tag, there are tilei tilim shal halachos, and certainly yaisim asher kris lefneichem ksuv kan. But basically, the kiddush is a deraisa. That all agree. Kiddush, Shabbos, Friday night is a deraisa. The only question is it alakais deraisa, or kiddush b'dvarim is enough? We try to do the kiddush alakais to be a deraisa, very similar to what we do with havdalah alakais. The objective of the kiddush is the chizuk and emunah that it's supposed to generate. It's important to have kavana. Let me buy if it's deraisa mitzvah is kavana, but even midrabanan, according to many shittas, mitzvah is kavanan. The three vikolus is both al pi halacha and al pi soid, and even if there's no reason al pi halacha, but there's a minhag to do it al pi soid 3 times minimally during the Friday night. We start with Yud Kei Vav Kei to start the kiddush with meaning and symbolism. Whether Yud Kei Vav Kei is plus other things, we'll soon see some say Sivri Mrnn also, but certainly the Yom HaShishi Vichulu HaShemayim besides Yud Kei Vav Kei also supplements the necessary number of 72. Some were makbid to have 72, some 70 is enough, but no doubt about it, every word of Kiddush literally counts. We saw that Nusach Ashkenaz, the Kiddush and Tefillah also has 70 words. Vichulu is 35 and the Brach is 35. For those that add to Kiddush Kivana V'charta or Kiyu Yoim, so it's more than 72, or Nusach Svardish Shmeinesri is more than 70. So we'll say Kol HaMoisif Harei Ze Meshubach. It's only, you shouldn't have less than the amount that's necessary, but more is nach besser. Therefore, you could say Sabim Mrnn v'Rabbanan v'Rabbi Sai. Standing or sitting, each minhag is minhag Yisrael Torah. Some only stand for Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Yom HaShishi, which highlights the unusual importance of it. Some people say Vayera Vayivaika, or beginning of the passuk quietly, and then you add that to the rest of the passuk Yom HaShishi. You should pause in between Yom HaShishi Vicholu. There are other passuk, the rest of the passuk you say quietly, and you begin loud Yom HaShishi. The kos shel bracha, as we said, needs 10, or certainly the main is 4. Kos shel bracha, including kiddush, needs 10 or 4. Ituf is to be dressed, the covered the bracha, hat and jacket. Even the listeners, la'alocha, there's no chiyuv of shtifa and hadacha of rinsing if it's not dirty from food residue. But al pisoid, it seems that it should always be rinsed. Taichai kibaroi, it should be a perfectly clean becher. Those that add 3 drops, it's not to take off the pogum, it's not to make it meziga, because there's no problem in our wine. It's not pogum, it's new wine. That's not a problem that needs meziga, but it's al pisoid. There is no chiyuv to overflow the kos. Some do it al pisoid, and by avdollah it's mentioned, but by a regular kos shel bracha doesn't seem to be a chiyuv. Certainly, if you do overflow, you don't have to refill it a second time in the davasayv. If someone does not have enough wine to fill up the kos, he could add ice cubes or something else to raise the level, as long as it doesn't affect the quality or the taste of the wine. There's no chiyuv that the kos should be handed to you. Some say by benching it's more of an inyan, but by kiddush there's no chiyuv, but al pi soid, many people are makbid that should be handed, even the kos of kiddush. How to hold it? There are 3 ways, either to hold it on the palm and the fingers should contain it. Some mukabalim hold it only on the fingers, and some hold it like with their fingers, like they hold a cup of coffee. Either way, minhag Yisrael Torah. It should be held a tefach above the table. When you make the kiddush, you look at the neiros, then look at the wine, then either In the Siddur, I forgot to mention, of course, closing eyes is also an option. It's not much like davening. The Shulchan Aruch says you're supposed to close your eyes by Shemay Nesser, or you could look in the Siddur. And something I should have stressed more, the same applies to listeners. All of this, the Chiyuv of Kiddush is on men, women, and children, boys and girls. The listeners have to make sure to be focused and really be yaitz the entire Kiddush.
Yeah, sorry.